Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, the Guide to Italian Travel. I'm Darcy Melton.
And I'm Nathaniel Mellor.
And today we are going to pick up where we left off last episode. You can go back and listen now if you want to our last episode on Christmassy things, mostly Christmas markets in Italy. And today we're going to be talking about where Christmas was then and now, where it is in Italy. Christmas then and now in Italy.
I love that. You kind of came up with a title on the spot.
I did.
The history of, I think you're going to run us through the history or walk us through the history.
Yeah, very basic, kind of broad strokes of history of Christmas in Italy.
To get an idea. And then what it looks like now, if you're in Italy now, or if you are going to come next year and visit for Christmas, it's going to be different. I'd say it's going to be an interesting Christmas this year, given the fact that on December 24th, in a few short days from recording this, 7 days from recording this, is going to be the beginning of the Jubilee.
Yes. Woohoo.
In Rome, the Vatican, to be specific.
Mm-hmm.
And as we mentioned in the last episode, and we'll continue to probably mention this in the next couple of episodes until most people have heard, but we do have our pellet stove on in the background. So if you hear hums and the tinkling of pellets on metal, plinking, if you will, that is our pellet stove heating us up, our one warm room in the house. Unfortunately, we cannot turn it off and turn it back on again like you could like a little like space heater or something. It's sort of it takes 15 minutes to turn off and another 2 hours to heat back up again. So we can't just turn it off for the podcast, even though we've tried figuring that out. However, if it makes you feel happy, I'm sitting next to our Christmas tree that Darcy spent all yesterday evening lighting up.
It's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
It currently has 2 test ornaments on it.
That was Nathaniel's contribution.
Yeah.
The light contribution was not as successful, I think we could say.
You tried your best. I'm very particular about lights. I think I'm a pretty easygoing person, usually, but I'm pretty particular about Christmas tree lights.
This is also our first ever live Christmas tree, or not live, well, live, yes, but also this is our first Christmas tree in almost 10 years.
Yeah, it is.
I think since we've been together.
Not because we both love Christmas and general winter holiday vibes, festivities. We just have never been in a place in the last 10 years where we could have a real live Christmas tree.
Absolutely. Plus, it's like $120 to get a tree at like Whole Foods or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then
these
here
days, I think the cheapest one I saw in Savannah when we were there was around $90.
Yeah, and it's for like a little 4-foot.
It's a smallish one, yeah.
Tabletop tree.
It was, well, no, these were they were taller than me. So they were probably
okay, I take that back.
6 feet. I'm 5'4".
Well, if you celebrate Christmas and you're also sitting next to your tree, we figured you might want to know that we're sitting next to our tree. Mm-hmm. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, we hope that at least some of this is interesting, just in more of a knowledge-based thing.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much the last of our bookkeeping.
Yeah. If you like our podcast, you can follow us wherever you're listening, and you can follow us on Instagram. We're going to get better about posting, we promise. You can, if you have any questions, you can reach out on Instagram, which is at onlyabagpodcast. Right?
It is.
Okay. I always get it wrong. And you can also email us at onlyabagpodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns. If you want to send us pictures of your pets, we love that.
Or your houseplants, including but not limited to Christmas trees.
Yes, absolutely.
And geraniums and anything else you might have brought in for the winter. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't, you might want to.
We don't know that much about plants, though.
We do not. We brought a lot of our plants in, only to find out you're not supposed to bring in certain plants because they need the winter. So back outside they went.
Yeah, we're like overprotective, hovering parents to our plants. We're bad at letting them just be in the wild where they should be.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And if you like this podcast, if you'd like to leave us a review, you can do so wherever you listen. Mostly, I think actually it's just Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Mm-hmm. Samsung's closed down. Google's closed down. I think there's a few other ones, but a lot of them are just re-wrapped ways of listening to like on Apple or something. So that being said, if you'd like to leave us a review, you absolutely can. And
please do.
We really appreciate you listening. Thank you all so much for listening. And if you'd like to support us financially, you can do so by using our affiliate links in the description. If you are booking a trip anytime soon, if you're going to Rome, if you're going to Italy, if you're going to Wisconsin and you just want to support us and you want to use our booking links, you can
That's a good point.
It could be anywhere you go. You
really
can use
good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Well, Wisconsin, it's cheese.
No, I mean, I've thought of Wisconsin. I'm saying I haven't thought of using our booking link for booking outside of Italy, but you can do that too.
Absolutely. If you're going anywhere, if you plan any trips at all. So thank you all again so much for listening. And without further ado, or any more gilding of the lily, as they say in Knight's Tale, which
we recently rewatched that movie.
Fantastic movie. Darcy, please take it away. Tell us about history of Christmas in Italy.
Okay. So let's start with Saturnalia.
Beautiful.
Okay. So Saturnalia is the festival celebrating Saturn, the god, and it happened for a wide expanse of time during the Roman rule, but we're going to kind of set our minds to around 100 BCE.
Okay.
So this was around the time that they extended the festival. At this point, where we are in our minds, it is happening from December 17th to the 23rd.
It's a very short festival.
It's about a week long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but here's the thing. People got time off work.
Okay.
So things shut down for about a week.
6 days off work you're looking for all year.
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah, I guess so.
Sounds awful.
I mean, they had other festivals. We talked about some of them before.
That's a good point.
But,
Well,
this was like
August
the big one,
okay.
you know.
Debauchery, madness, drinking, games, food.
Yeah. And some of it was more like family oriented than you're making it sound.
Probably very, yeah.
I'm sure there was debauchery. It was ancient Rome.
Oh, I'm probably getting confused with the Bacchanalia.
I believe that is accurate, yes.
That makes a lot more sense. Probably less debauchery at the Saturnalia.
Okay. But to be fair, there was gambling. It was a thing. No, I mean, none of these things were, what is the word? Obligatory? So it's not like it's not like you have to be debaucherous.
You have
but
6
it's
days
an
off,
option.
you better spend your wages.
Yeah. Some of the texts that I was reading mentioned women were allowed in men's spaces, which sometimes means... So part of this festival was that, in a way, people swapped roles. Not hugely. Mostly in the... if someone was a boss, they ran a business and they had employees, they would kind of swap roles in that employees got time off and they were given gifts from their employers, and there was a certain sense of like a power dynamic shift, less like you were being overbeared by your boss.
So your boss isn't like calling you on for your 6 days off, basically saying where you at.
It's more like you get to be... You don't get to be the boss for 6 days, but there was that kind of sense. So I think some of the texts were referring to women being in men's spaces in that there was a shift. Like it wasn't... Certain spaces weren't strictly for men during that time, but in other ways it also meant that ladies of the night, perhaps, were entering men's spaces to entertain.
So it could go either way.
That is debaucherous.
And that is not family friendly.
Correct.
Okay. Just making sure. That was not the family friendly thing
But other parts were. So there were just parties, festivities, music, singing, dancing, instruments.
Okay.
Things.
All
Obviously,
the fun things. I like that.
Drinking, which is not family friendly. It was a big mix.
If you drink with the family, it's family friendly.
It can be. If you drink responsibly, yes. But it's interesting to me because all of this is stuff... I mean, it's pretty generic, the partying, you know.
Yeah.
But it's all stuff that today we still do around this time. Not so much the debaucherous stuff, hopefully, but the parties, the dancing.
The time
exactly.
Off. Wait, you said not the drinking or not the... Which one? Not the
debauchery.
Yeah, no. But I think that pretty much the rest of it is... There's definitely that sense that when you enter like December 1st that it's like, okay, we're done already.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you're at work or at school, you're like, no, but this is holidays.
Yeah, because I never felt like that in the States until like well into December. Because there's always that like after the Thanksgiving break, you'd come back and they're like, all right, we have 3 weeks to get ready. So we're going to just drill you full of information before you leave for 2 weeks for the winter break. So I think here there's definitely more of a, obviously there's no Thanksgiving break. So there's more of like, once it hits December 1st, it's just forget about it.
Yes. Well, somewhat. We're going to get into later dates in Italy of when the general holiday Christmas season is celebrated.
Okay.
But, okay, so other things that are similar, I find this one the most fascinating. Wreaths. They made wreaths and put greenery around their homes, which, when you think about it, like I can totally picture that in ancient Rome, obviously. But it's so specific that we still make a circle of branches.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you find what they used to make a wreath? Because obviously now it's more of like wintergreen, but like you and I will use cypress, which is more from the north anyway. So I'm wondering if it's just sort of like but also I think we've mentioned in a previous episode that when you graduate from, is it just your doctorate? Just when you get your doctorate?
I used to think it was all graduation, but it might. No, it can't be because we know someone who just graduated and she didn't get a doctorate. So I think it's everybody.
Okay, because that's you get your laurels. You get like a
laurel wreath on your head,
which is bay leaf for anybody in the States who, like myself, have never heard of laurel wreaths until somebody's like, it's just bay.
And in Italian, it's alloro.
Yeah, which is kind of a fun one. So
I only say that because it sounds
it
like
sounds
laurel.
like laurel. Yeah. And you've heard resting on your laurels, but not resting on your bay leaves. But no, I think it's interesting because it's like the idea of a circle of living or once living, I guess, because they don't attach the roots to your head of a plant. It's kind of like it's a big thing. So it's interesting to me that they would have used it in celebration as well.
Yeah, really cool. And they also did a gift exchange, usually on a particular day. But
Secret Saturnalia. It's like instead of Secret Santa. I just came up with that. I had to say it out loud. I apologize.
Amazing. We should do that. And if you're listening to this the day it comes out, you're listening to it on the day after Saturnalia commences. That's begin.
Commenced.
Yeah.
Commences,
Cominciare. Okay. Sometimes now that I've learned part of a second, I don't fluently speak Italian, but now that I know some Italian words, I find it easier to define American English words in my head.
By the Italian one?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So it commences the day that we're recording on December 17th. So happy Saturnalia, everybody.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yeah. So we're giving you the gift of this podcast.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
So people exchanged gifts. And obviously, this was a very long time ago, so they weren't giving each other, I don't know, like MacBooks and things. They were giving each other like very simple gifts, which I think is
funny
lovely.
enough. We also don't give each other MacBooks, but that's less.
I know,
about
but I was
time
trying to
period
think of
and
like
more
what's the most commercial
income.
capitalist thing I can think of, and it's
clothes. Apple.
Yeah,
that's fair.
But
a gift card to like Enmark or some sort of gas station.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a big one because everyone's like, you need gas, and it's like that's not a gift. That's just like a thing.
Well, okay, but that kind of relates to the way people were giving gifts at this time. Some of them were more practical. And they also had these figurines that they would exchange, and as well as candles. And both figurines and candles were also used as offerings to Saturn.
Interesting. Like, I mean, when you say offerings to Saturn, you mean they would sort of sacrifice them in some way, or would they?
Great question. Okay. Because I didn't want to take everyone down a giant rabbit hole.
This is now a history podcast. You're welcome.
I know. But I'm not a historian and I don't want to relay incorrect information. However, there was a history of human sacrifice during Saturnalia. That did not happen during the time period we're talking about now. However, some people believe that the figurines were a symbol of the human sacrifice.
So it's sort of like we should stop killing people. We should
we'll just use the
pretend
dolls.
to. Okay, got it. That makes sense.
So I imagine that you would put them at the temple or at the the altar of Saturn, as a symbolic gesture.
That makes sense. Interesting.
And one other super cool thing that were attached to the gifts?
Feathers, ribbons, wings. I should stop guessing. Holly
I love
branches.
all of that. No. Little notes and poems, much like we have greeting cards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because Hallmark is just killing it back then.
I know. It's so there's so many traditions that we have that come from this time.
That's
it's fascinating. So
I took us off course. I apologize.
You did, but that's okay. So I just wanted to briefly mention the other thing. We talked about exchanging gifts between adults, but obviously kids would be, not obviously, I'm telling you now, kids got toys and sweets of the day, which is 1-to-1 exactly what we do with our kids now.
Much.
Yeah.
Just toys and sweets.
Yeah.
Jack them up on sugar and caffeine and be like, you're going to crash soon, but like, we're going to drink before then. I'm kidding. We don't have kids.
That's how some people celebrate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you should. I mean, that's how Italians celebrate. There's always like a bottle of Coke and a bottle of wine on the table. And it's sort of very much like, if you're under this height, you go for this one. If you're over this height, you go for that one.
You can't go by height in this country, though.
Wasn't that height's like 2 foot tall? I feel like there's like some just 3 foot kids walking around with a glass of wine. Like, mother, more wine, please.
I have not seen that.
Probably not.
No. Okay. So to cap off the celebration, it's not the same. Okay, so Saturnalia ends on the 23rd, right?
Okay.
But to sort of round off the celebrations was the holiday of Dies Natales Sol Invictus. So Sol Invictus is the unconquered sun, and he is the god of sun.
S-U-N, correct?
Yes, thank you. The sun god, like Sol.
Rather than like he exemplifies male children everywhere.
Yes, exactly, correct. The sun in the sky, S-U-N, is who he is. And so this is fascinating. On the Julian calendar, which was the calendar that the Romans were using in this time around.
As opposed to the Gregorian, I think, right?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
I'm making sure. I sound like an idiot if I'm
Gregorian
wrong.
is what we use now, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. This is not a history podcast, as previously stated.
So they're using the Julian calendar. And the winter solstice happened on December 25th on this calendar.
Interesting.
I know, 4 days later than how we have it.
Wild.
I know,
Okay.
right? So this was the winter solstice and the Dies Natalis Sol Invictus. Those were things celebrated on December 25th. Dies Natalis Sol Invictus, there we go, is did I say this? It's the birthday.
No.
Okay, it is the birthday of the invincible, unconquered sun. It can be translated both ways, the invincible sun or
That makes sense. The Invictus
unconquered.
part makes sense. Okay.
So it ended Saturnalia, essentially. Even though it wasn't the same holiday, it was, there were 2 days in between, so it was kind of a cap.
Extend that a little bit.
Exactly. And so in 330 CE now, so this is about 400 years later than what we were talking about a moment ago, Constantine said, hey, this is a paraphrase, I'm not a historian. He goes, hey, there's this cool guy called Christ, and I'm pretty sure we should celebrate his birthday on the 25th of December. And people were like, that sounds cool. Obviously not everybody. This was a time when people worshiping Roman gods were obviously coexisting with this new thing called Christianity. So Constantine was like, we're going to celebrate Christ's birthday. It's the 25th. People were like, that sounds cool. In 337, 7 years later, Constantine died, and the same year, Pope Julius I made Christ's birthday, or that day to celebrate Christ's birthday, official in the eyes of the Catholic Church.
That is fascinating. And just jumping back for a second, I wanted to go back to talking about Christmas Day, then called the Invictus Sol Invictus.
Dies Natalis, sorry, I'm saying it like it's Italian. Dies Natalis Sol Invictus. That was my best Latin.
I was like, is that American or Latin? So Dies Natalis Sol Invictus. Mm-hmm. So that was celebrated on as you mentioned, that's the Julian calendar. So that would have been the shortest day of the year.
Yes.
Kind of an interesting thing then.
That is winter solstice, so the darkest day of the year.
Because now, obviously, we don't have people do, as we've talked about before, they do celebrate the winter solstice. But it's interesting that it's, now that it doesn't line up with Christmas, it's not really a celebration. I mean, some people do for sure, but it's not a big thing, even though it is arguably like, if you made it to that point, it's only easy going from there in terms of just like every day is going to get longer, but also, to be fair, I think colder, because really it doesn't get cold here until it's cold now, but cold until February. It's going to get colder,
but brighter, yeah.
Yeah, which will be kind of an interesting thing. I guess that happens everywhere like that, but still fascinating.
I think it's interesting though that at least, this is obviously speaking from experience, a lot of the people around us don't necessarily purposefully celebrate or acknowledge the darkest day of the year and the light, longer days coming back. However, a lot of our traditions are linked to that.
Yeah.
Like having candles around, lighting your tree, people who celebrate Christmas. I think the Christ figure is a symbol of hope and light. So even in that way, we're going to talk a little bit later, midnight mass, but I grew up going to church, and we had the, midnight on Christmas Eve service. And so you hold candles and sing.
Yeah.
And so all of that, and obviously I am not a religious scholar, but there are also traditions in Judaism, for sure, celebrating the light coming back. Mm-hmm. That's, to my knowledge, a big part of Hanukkah, is acknowledging that. So I think that's still a big part of, and especially people who are agnostic and just celebrate, winter holidays and Christmas, it's a big part of what we do in traditions, even if we don't realize where those traditions came from.
And I think that's, fascinating. I know this is a travel podcast about planning your trip to Italy, but it is interesting that I think we've talked about this a lot, especially, it's so much more apparent, I think, in southern Italy, where even, because I know we have a lot of people who don't like Christmas for a variety of reasons, and I think one of the many reasons is that it has become a commercialized sort of holiday.
Of course,
It's
yeah.
just the music. I mean, I think that's the joke where it's like right now, like Thanksgiving's the only thing holding, or it's like Thanksgiving holding back the tide of Christmas kind of thing. But if there weren't like Thanksgiving, there weren't Halloween, there'd be, Christmas things for sale in August kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely we notice that when we're in the States, especially because in Italy, it's so different in the sense of like, I mean, we've got a Christmas tree, as we mentioned a couple of days ago. And in the States, it feels really difficult to get a Christmas tree that soon, close to Christmas, or Christmas lights even, or
Because they're all sold out.
They're all sold out, yeah. And I think it's like, I mean, there's also that sort of drive, like, you need to get one, like you can't not have one. And I think it's just interesting how here there are definitely, I think, more older / different traditions, and they don't buy in too much. And when I say here, I do mean southern Italy more so than the entirety of Italy, because obviously in Rome and stuff, it's like it does pay to be a little bit festive, and just for all the winter visitors that are like, who are expecting wreaths and garlands and green and lights and candles to have all those things.
And a lot of the like Germanic traditions have trickled, obviously for a long time they've been happening in the north, but those I think have trickled down to Rome in modern days. So there is a lot more decoration in places like that and in big cities than there would be here, and a bit obviously more commercialism in big cities. That's just going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's just fascinating how I think we talk a lot about different holidays. As we talked about Ferragosto, we talked about San Giovanni, we talked about why people do what they do, and today it's interesting because it is very much still like in touch with the original sort of not create, but the original idea behind it. Like we're burning the olive branches today because that's just the day we've always done it, and we're drinking wine and eating sausage, and it's for free because that's how it's always been. And so it's interesting when how you see these sort of traditions sort of translated into the modern day. It's fascinating where they lose their meaning, and then or what the meaning might have even originally been, if it's not just simply, again, consumerism.
One thing I find interesting is that I think it's Italians, this is a big generalization, but Italians stick to celebration dates.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And holidays. It's very evident where we are, like you said, like if there's a saint day, people do that thing. If this has, like the olive branches have traditionally been burned on this day, they do that thing. There are still people who don't light their first fire until
I want to say it's like November 1st or something.
Something like that. Even if it's chilly, people won't light their fire until that day because that's when you do it. And what's interesting is that Black Friday has been a thing somewhat, like you've seen the phrase Black Friday here, or one has, for maybe for us at least, last 5 years.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
But it was never obviously the way it was in America. It's not like the day after Thanksgiving everybody goes crazy and stampedes Walmart or whatever it is.
It's a random Friday in November.
Exactly, because obviously there's no Thanksgiving here. But it hasn't been happening long enough, I think, for the tradition to come over here in the exact way that what happens in the U.S. And now, in the last couple of years, it seems that the U.S. has changed Black Friday to like Black Friday week or Black Friday 2 weeks. And that's now how it's happening here. But I guess it's interesting to me because there's so many traditions so set in stone that have been happening for so long in this country that the Black Friday blip that has happened is kind of like come and gone. It's still here, but it's just, it never really fomented. That's the one.
But I think the better question is, how will our children carry on that tradition? Will they get up at 2 a.m. to go find a computer discounted?
Ours?
For sure not.
No.
Our kids will never wake up that early.
No.
So what's next?
That was a great segue.
Thank you. It felt very natural.
Okay, so let's talk about Italy. What? Of course we're talking about Italy.
I hope so. Otherwise our listeners can get very confused.
Let's talk about Christmas in Italy today. I do want to I know this is kind of dry, but I want to run over some dates because they're interesting.
It's also, I think it is important if you do come to Italy, these dates specifically that I think you're going to talk about, because especially, again, going back to the trip planning or Italian travel podcast, these are the dates that will help you. It'll also explain why certain things might be more expensive than other days. Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point. Okay, so the holiday season
the winter holiday Christmas season in Italy officially starts on the day of the Immaculate Conception, which is Festa della Immacolata, which is the Immaculate Conception refers to Mary being born without sin, just in case that's interesting to you. So that is December 8th. And if you listened to our last episode, you may remember that we talked about some of the Christmas markets beginning on December 8th. And that is pretty traditional. And if you don't know the dates of a Christmas market, they will often start on that day because that is the commencement of the festive season for the winter.
For people listening who, like myself, have no idea what that might mean, it's always on December 8th, correct?
Yes.
So it's not always like on a Sunday or something?
No.
Okay,
always
just making
December
sure.
8th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the I was gonna make it like a cymbal noise. That's the beginning of the holiday season, and there are.
That's amazing. We need like a little soundboard for you.
Yeah, we do. And then the season officially ends on Epiphany, Epifana, which is January 6th, and in that time there are several other holidays. So. It starts with the Immaculate Conception, December 8th. Then Santa Lucia happens on December 3rd. December 13th, sorry.
I was going to say they're going back in time. This is a crazy holiday.
That is the saint day of Santa Lucia, or Saint Lucy. And so she's going to come back up in just a minute, but hold that in your mind. So the next day is Christmas Eve, obviously, the 24th. And I think a lot of people know that date, but it is interesting to me because in the South, that is kind of the 2 days between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, that is the more festive get-togethery day for a lot of Italians. You get together, you cook, it's a big family day.
Yeah.
You still open gifts on the 25th, but the 24th is really the big party day.
And we'll talk about even the gifts, I think, in a minute, because even those, I feel like, it's a different experience, I feel like.
Yeah, at least in our experience, it has been different.
Which, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So the next day is Christmas Day. And then Santo Stefano is December 26th, the day after Christmas, which is also called Boxing Day in the UK and other countries who have adopted it. And then Epiphany is January 6th, and that is the end of the season.
So also, again, tying this into the fact that this is a travel podcast, this means that on the December 6th, is that what we said? Mm-hmm. When it starts, is it December 6th?
December 8th.
December 8th, excuse me. December 8th is almost certainly going to be a day when things are shut down. I know that here it is what it is. I mean, where we are in the entire South, everything's going to be closed. Typically, nothing's available, nothing's open. Buses, trains, all that would run a reduced schedule. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes if there is a strike planned, they might plan the strike for that day since it might not be a big travel day in general. But all this is just to say if you're coming for the festivities, that would be something to keep in mind. I think same thing, Epifana. Mm-hmm. It's more of there's I think like a parade. It's a busier day because I think we watched a parade once on TV.
Yes, Epiphany is a pretty big holiday, and we will probably have an episode on
for sure
a special person who comes on Epifana. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, I was gonna say who come, and I'm like, oh, I know what you're talking about. So all that being said is, yeah, those are days, and as you mentioned too, I think in the States, weirdly, like it used to be like Christmas was like the travel day, like a great travel day, not because of Die Hard 2, but because it used to be like the secret, like once you, if you traveled on Christmas Day, you could get like, discounts, or you can get like bumped up because everyone's like, who wants to travel on Christmas Day? As a wee child, I once traveled many times on Christmas. I many times traveled on Christmas Day because, I had to go visit my parents in two different locations, and you have to fly there. That sounds so mysterious. So all that being said is here, though, it's a little different. It is a much more reduced travel day in terms of just getting around. And then the day after, the 26th, at least, again, I keep saying in the South, because that's where a lot of our knowledge does come from when it comes to the North being a little bit more type A personality, I guess, versus the type B personality. A little more businessy. And this is also going to be a difference between cities and small towns. Small town, I mean, you can consider the small town even in the North, just like the South, in terms of, they're not going to run their 2 buses a day, are not going to run on December 8th, or as I'm about to say now, the December 26th. That's almost a bigger holiday, at least where we are, than Christmas. Like Christmas Day, weirdly, the bars will still be open, mm-hmm. restaurants will still be open because people eat there, or, I don't know, sometimes a grocery store will be open in the morning, like if you need something, mm-hmm. but the 26th, nothing. That is everyone's day off. No one's out about. People are out and about, but nothing's open. No bars. Nothing.
Yeah, I think celebrations might be more on the 24th and the 25th, but you're right. Some things will be open, especially because everybody knows that family's visiting,
Yeah.
and people are going to need a coffee. They're going to need it tomorrow. They're going to go to the
Need
bar.
to get out of their house.
Exactly. Really good point. Certainly people will be forgetting things, so they need to go to the grocery store. But on the 26th, it is a chill off work day.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there for anybody who is planning on a trip, or even if you're here now, if you're like, oh, we're gonna take a train on this day on Christmas, just keep in mind it might not be a great travel day. It might just be a day where nobody wants to be there, kind of thing, or just they're going to be striking, or one of 100 things. So just keep that in mind if you are using this as a travel time.
Mm-hmm. Really good point.
So, what is next? What is next?
Well, do you want to... Okay, let's talk about sort of general big Christmas tradition-y things that happen in Italy. Yeah? Okay. So this one I found fascinating because while we, Nathaniel and Darcy, have a Christmas tree this year, and I just want to say again that it is beautiful and I love it, and I'm looking at it right now. Christmas trees are not a big, typical thing for people to have in southern Italy.
They are really not.
No, we were lucky to find one at a vivaio, which is the garden shop, plant shop. But they're really not so much a thing here. And there have been years where they're not available anywhere near us.
Also, we found a living one, so it has like the root ball still attached. So it's basically just a plant. Like we bought a plant. I mean, it's a tree.
There's a full tree in a large pot in our living room.
And it's not a Douglas fir. I think like in the States we're very used to like Douglas fir or whatever being like the thing. It's more of a, I don't know. I'm looking at it now. Like not a pine tree, but not a Douglas fir.
It's got to still be a fir, though, of some sort.
Yeah.
I was quite impressed that it was not a cypress tree.
And a lot of times they are cypress trees.
Mm-hmm. I would have been okay with that.
Yeah.
But I love it. And so what's interesting to me is that having a Christmas tree is a tradition in northern Italy. Which makes
very
sense.
Germanic.
Yeah, exactly. They're closer to Germany.
They're also closer to where the trees probably grow.
Yes.
Like what do we have?
Definitely.
Little olive trees we give each other? Just like, grow this in your house. It'll take 2,000 or 3,000 years, but it'll be beautiful.
We should just have an olive tree. We should have an atrium.
Yeah, we should.
With an olive tree in it.
We decorate the olive tree with lights and baubles.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's the plan. Let's get that in the works, Nathaniel. So I don't know when the U.S. started having Christmas trees as a tradition, but I do know that a lot of our American Christmas traditions did come out of the 1800s to early 1900s. Mid 1800s is when a lot of them were fomented. Did I use that word?
Makes sense. I think that would have been because a lot of them are Germanic in nature, or even some of them I think are Irish in nature, and that would have been a time of a lot of immigration, like late 1800s or even mid 1800s.
But it was also a time of a rise of commercialism.
Well, there you go. Mm-hmm. You can't have Christmas without commercialism.
I think that is accurate. Well, you can celebrate Christmas, but the Christmas we know today, not so much. So in the 20th century is when they became pretty widely popular in Italy, the Christmas trees.
And I'm curious to know when the Vatican started having one. Mm-hmm. Just because that's, question. Again, like I'm always curious, like the Vatican, did things follow the Vatican or the Vatican follow other trends? Like, oh, people are like the Rockefeller. That's such a weird word. Rocker.
Rocket. ROCKE.
Rockefeller. Okay. Like, was it after the Rockefeller Center had a tree that they're going to do it? Was it before? Because I feel like Rockefeller.
Probably after Rockefeller. Commercialism, right? Nathaniel.
That's what I'm
snap. I'm not going to snap on the podcast. That one might hurt your ears.
That's a good point. You can like snap in the background and pretend it's, I don't know. That worked.
Commercialism.
I love that. So, no, that's what I'm curious about because there's a lot, like I said, there's those traditions that we have. We mentioned the Christmas markets. They have like those wooden stalls, which are fairly Germanic. And that, of course, is even in the South. They'll do that. And we talked about, do lights ever come up? Is that a thing? Is that just a new thing?
I think that's a new thing. I think...
Nobody wants their tree to catch on fire with candles. They use lights kind of thing.
Right. I imagine that was probably a thing, just the way that it was in Germany.
Sure,
that they would have
sense.
put candles in the trees. So I imagine it was a thing here. But if you're talking about like lights in cities... I think that's a fair, like,
We talked about Salerno and Torino in the last episode.
exactly. I think that's a fairly new idea, which
Okay.
trees are too. I mean, 20th century is when they became widely popular. So last century, not
Kind
very
of
long
fascinating.
ago.
I mean, it's fascinating only because, again, I think I grew up with an idea that Italy was going to celebrate, I mean, I just grew up knowing that Christmas was vaguely Christian and that Italy is vaguely Christian. And I thought, well, those two should really have gotten together. And boy, was it a disappointment, our first Christmas here. I think you and I were
Yes.
really looking forward to it. And it was like, couldn't find a Christmas tree. You could find lights, but it was like hard to not find the blue lights or the icicle lights or like a regular strand of lights that also were not like bright white. A lot of them were, like, we use those like the yellow, soft white, whatever they're called.
We're going to have to do an episode on Southern Italians' affinity for that 6,000 Kelvin? Is that what it is?
6,000, yeah,
Like
Kelvin.
blue, white, bright, horrible light bulb color.
Really, actually awful. And no, I think it's interesting because even like we went where there's no, I think this is also again coming from the States where it was just, there's a thing happening. There's Christmas music playing. I mean, like there was Christmas music playing, like we got there in October and there's Christmas music playing sometimes.
In the
And,
States?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're here now, it's all a bunch of Italian pop music playing. And I'm like, there's not even like
I definitely expected Italian Christmas music.
something, right? I mean, so I think there's that, again, I say all this because if you are, I know that as you, dear listener, might be thinking about a trip to Italy, because we've talked about how the winter is, I mean, by and large, half the price to travel in Italy in the winter. And Darcy and I have been looking at going to just spend a few nights in Venice, and it's a third of the price. Like we're looking at these really nice hotels that are usually $300 to $400 a night in just not even the summer, just like in the spring and fall. And they're only like 90 euros right now a night. And it's a wild difference. So it's much cheaper. I mean, of course, Venice does tend to flood in the winter, so that could have something to do with it. But even Rome's pretty cheap. We just passed through Rome, so it's just, I think you and I, had we been living in the States and just traveling, would have absolutely continued to travel to Italy in the winter just for the cost and for the fact that, a lot of good food, as we'll talk about in the next episode. And it's interesting that it's not really a Christmassy place. Like it's not, like I think we've talked about going to Germany one day just to kind of experience the Christmas markets, because I feel like you might as well if you're so close to Germany.
Absolutely.
So it's just, for those listening, it's not the same experience in our opinion.
No, and I would say that if you want to come to Italy around wintertime, Christmas time, and you enjoy Christmas celebrations, and you aren't set on a place that you want to go, as much as I love Southern Italy, I would highly recommend Northern Italy during that time, because like Nathaniel's saying, Southern Italy they're just not as festive around this time. There's definitely not the same cheer in the air that there is, which, I mean, maybe it's forced in the US, obviously, and a lot of it does have to do with, shopping and hearing Christmas music. However, it's just not the same in Southern Italy, where I do think the North has a bit more of a cheery, festive thing happening.
For sure. Absolutely.
More decorations, trees.
And if I could jump into the, unless I'm going too far, but if I can jump into the gift giving, that's something I've always found is kind of fascinating, because in our experience here, it's been, at least as we've seen, between friends and between family members, it's not much of a thing. Again, this is very specifically the South. It seems like people give kids gift, kind of like, if they're under 12, they get a gift kind of thing, but not, I guess, in the States. I grew up on, again, sort of Home Alone and Christmas Story and even Harry Potter, and like, I've got 32 gifts this year, but last year it was 33. That's my best Dudley voice. And it's fascinating because I feel like that's, you grow up on that and you come to a place where it's like, oh yeah, did you want a gift? Like, we don't really do gifts here. Like, did you buy something for someone?
I have a question. It's about Harry Potter.
Yes.
Is his name Dudley or Pugsley?
Dudley. Dudley.
Who's Pugsley?
There's a Pugsley.
There's not a Pugsley in Harry Potter?
There's not a Pugsley in Harry Potter.
Wow. I imagined that. Okay.
I think it's Dudley Vernon or Dudley Verson, or something or another.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wild.
You've grown your entire life thinking it's a Pugsley.
I'm still convinced Pugsley exists somewhere.
You Pugsley.
Yeah.
That's my best Harry Potter voice for you.
You're definitely right. And I wonder how much of that is our experience. We have family here that we celebrate Christmas with whenever we are here. And I wonder if that is somewhat just, if if our impression is because of who we celebrate Christmas with,
Bunch of
or
depressed people.
or if it is a Southern Italian
Yeah.
or an Italian thing to mostly give gifts only to kids.
And I think there's still, I mean, gifts, when I say gifts too, I do mean like actually, as you mentioned earlier, like physical things like, oh, you always wanted that new hard drive, or you always wanted a pair of shoes. But I mean, people do give like a bottle of wine. There's a lot
for
of food. Like you can't show up like without, well, actually one of the big things that's sold around this time is a box, and the box has panettone in it, and it has a bottle of Prosecco, and it has like a little bar of
gift basket.
Torrone. Yeah, it's like a little like these three things. And I know that one of our friends who's an architect, he receives a lot of these because anytime he does a job around the Christmas, or even not even around Christmas, it's just people he's worked with in the past will drop off a basket. But it's at the same time, he often has to go and buy a bunch of baskets in order to give them as gifts to like the workers, or the foreman, or the plumber, or the electrician. So it's kind of this interesting time where you basically spend 200 euros giving out gifts, all to receive 200 euros back in pretty much the exact same thing you just bought to give out.
I love it though.
It's a wild, but not, again, it's like nobody needs, 18 panettone, but they are going to have 18 panettone at the end of the Christmas season. And sometimes, again, it's like a bottle of nice wine if they want to mix it up a little bit, but or maybe something nicer if it's like, oh, we got, brandy or something, or grappa, or, but it's an interesting thing where
there's a lot of exchange of food.
A lot of it, yeah.
And I think that happens within adults and families as well.
For sure.
That is not, I don't think that's seen necessarily as a gift between
obligation.
families. Yeah. Or just a, hey, I brought you this thing. Because if you go to someone's house for dinner or for any celebration, you're going to bring cake or wine or something.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
only polite.
That's just what you do. I don't think that's necessarily a gift. But I was just thinking about the people that we celebrate Christmas with when we're here. And Carla she knits a lot of gifts for people.
For sure.
And that kind of harkens back to the, I was going to say sanitarium. Saturnalia is the word. The idea of not even practical, but homemade little gifts, which is lovely.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, that's fascinating.
So should we talk about who brings kids gifts on Christmas?
I guess so. It sounds like a cliffhanger.
Okay.
You're going to say that, and if it's not Santa, I feel like we have something to talk about.
Okay. Sometimes it is Santa Claus. He is called Babbo Natale, which is Father Christmas. Babbo is Father. Natale is Christmas. So Babbo Natale does come to some houses. Very picky. I don't think he chooses. I think the kids get to choose who comes. So some people believe that Babbo Natale delivers gifts. Some people believe that baby Jesus himself delivers the gifts.
I like it's himself. I like that you put so much emphasis. He walks in with a gift down the chimney.
It's just the most fascinating one to me, I think, because he's a baby.
Yeah.
A baby is delivering you gifts?
Is it not like toddler Jesus? I mean, because I can see that, like, at least standing upright, walking, two hands.
What is he going to bring?
Well, I was thinking more he's just
he
a
has
delivery.
like attendants.
Yeah.
The
He's
disciples
like, hand it to
come
me
with
and
him.
I'll put it under the tree.
And they deliver the gifts.
I'll put it on the table. I assume he doesn't come into the chimney.
I don't know. I could not find very much detail about how baby Jesus is supposed to be delivering the gifts.
It feels like the Talladega Nights conversation. Like, how did baby Jesus do it? It's like, I'm just picturing a small... Back and forth is exactly what I'm picturing.
And I'm not ragging on anybody on who believes this. I just don't understand the practical details of that one. But also, Babbo Natale, Father Christmas, he comes down the chimney. Is that practical? Also, no.
And in every movie ever, he always drops off like a gift at one house and then immediately just like goes 200 miles west. Yeah. Right? He doesn't just like go to the house next door.
He has to work like a postal worker. You park your van, you park your sleigh, and you walk to each house on the block, and then you go back.
Yeah, he does not do that.
No,
he just
not in
zooms
movies. So that is not accurate.
Order, maybe.
It can't be.
He doesn't even like stick to the same time zone.
In movies, no.
Right.
I don't think that could possibly be how he actually functions.
That's what's wild to me.
There's no way. We may never know. But if you're listening, we need to know exactly how you do it.
Write in onlyaBagpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Likewise, baby Jesus. If you could write in, you can send us an email or find us on Instagram. We want to know how you do it.
Or your attendance, if you can't type.
Yes, if you are in fact a baby Jesus and you cannot write or type.
I think borderline heretical, right? We're like just bordering on...
Well, I'm trying not to be. I just really want to know the practicalities.
It's Christmas. I think it's time to everyone to be blasphemous.
Okay.
Is that how that works?
So, speaking of blasphemy, no.
This would go really well in Northern Italy.
Of Catholic things, Santa Lucia is another person who comes to deliver gifts, and you may remember that we mentioned her earlier, just a few moments ago. So her saint day is on December 13th. And whenever I first learned about her being one of the people who brings gifts, I thought, oh, of course, she comes on December 13th. No. She comes on the same day as baby Jesus and Babbo Natale. She comes on Christmas Eve to deliver gifts. I'm not sure why she comes on that day rather than her saint day, but she does. Well, okay, some of the text did say that it is to welcome Jesus's birth, essentially.
Fair enough.
That could make sense. And she also represents, as well as being the protector of sight, and the saint of blindness, I believe, that she's both of those. It wasn't just mistranslated. I'm not entirely sure. But she is the protector of sight. She also represents light and hope.
Interesting.
So that makes sense. So here's what I find interesting. She has a lot of similarities to Santa Claus. So she delivers gifts to well-behaved children who have written her a list, a request of the items that they want, just like Santa.
This is also, if like, for those who are listening, like, Santa's not real, it's just parents doing it. Great work, parents, trying to figure out what their kids want. Make a list, and maybe Santa Lucia or Babbo Natale will give it to you. Because I don't know what you're into these days.
I mean, every adult needs a list.
100%.
You can't just read minds, no matter who you are.
Because also, it's like the idea, because when you're an adult, like, and your friend, like, in June mentions, is like, oh, I really want a pasta maker. You have to write that down and remember it in December that they want a pasta maker. A kid mentions something in June, they're going to look at you like you're an idiot in December. Be like, yeah, in June. That was 6 months ago. That's an eighth of my life ago. I don't want that today.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they have to deal with. So that's when you need a list.
Absolutely.
It's to be written practical. Like December 15th.
Yes. So she delivers gifts to well-behaved children who've made her list. And one of the sources that I was reading said that you put out a cup of tea for her when she arrives, which I love, instead of like milk and cookies for Santa.
She's English.
Yeah, she likes a little cup of tea. It's cold outside. She needs a hot beverage. And this one, I think, was a mistranslation, and I could not find any more info. So you put out tea for Santa Lucia and flour for the donkey that she rides on to enter the town.
I feel like you buried the lead there, because she rides in on a donkey.
Yes. So she rides in on a donkey, and she is announced in the town when she arrives by the ringing of bells.
But you could not figure out which bells, as I
Yes,
recall.
I'm unclear. So my mind obviously goes sleigh bells, which then when my mind went sleigh bells and I was thinking about it, I realized that in my mind, the bells are not attached to the sleigh. They're attached
to the donkey.
No, they're attached to Santa Claus. Oh. And that doesn't make any sense. I've never seen a Santa Claus who has bells on him. That's just how he exists in my mind. His bells on his outfit.
Like on their it could be. Kind of be cool if there were button bells.
Yeah, I was also thinking like the little anklets that you can wear with little bells.
I like that
he just jingles as he
Santa
walks
has
around.
Anklets.
Yeah.
He's in his anklet phase.
He's not the most practical Santa in my mind.
He cannot creep through your chimney.
Good point. That's why they're on the sleigh.
That's amazing. Like, so she has a sip of tea, or do you think there's a whole cup of tea everywhere she goes?
Oh, well, we're going to have to put one out this year.
She's wired on caffeine.
I don't know. We have to put out a cup of tea on
hot chocolate, cookies,
Christmas Eve, and see.
And flour.
Let's do a test. See who comes.
It will be me and both of them. I will eat it all except the flour.
We're not going to get any gifts if you drink and eat all of their snacks.
That's a very good point.
Okay, so she comes into town on a donkey, and she jingles all the way. I don't know that she does. Bells are involved. I don't know if they're the church bells. They're probably the church bells. Someone notices Santa Lucia coming. They ring the bells of the church to let everybody know. I could not find information as to whether the children need to be in bed. You know, like for Santa, you can't see him. You need to be in bed. I'm not sure with her. I imagine it's the same.
I think if they're ringing bells and sort of announcing it, it feels like you should be in the street and she hands out your gifts and you throw flour at her or something. The donkey just snaps it out of midair. I'm seeing Eddie Murphy as Donkey and Shrek just like eating like just flour everywhere.
Well, that's the part I don't understand. I think the flour must be a mistranslation. It's got to be barley
or wheat or something. Yeah.
Or something. But they shouldn't be eating wheat. I guess they could eat wheat if it's not processed.
Well, they could eat like wheat stalks, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I assume they just go in the wheat fields and just munch away.
Yeah, probably. That's probably true. We've seen donkeys do that, yeah. But they shouldn't be eating processed wheat.
Yeah.
This is not an anti-processed food thing. I'm just saying, like,
It's just powder in your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's
Powdered
weird.
wheat. It's not good. So that was a fun explanation of how I think that thing was mistranslated. But the point is that she comes and she drinks her cup of tea and she leaves gifts and sweets as well.
Okay.
So that Santa Lucia was born in Syracuse in Sicily. But
Do you know when she was born in Syracuse in Sicily?
I don't. I think I did earlier, but I've now forgotten.
I asked that because I know that Archimedes, I believe, was also born in Syracuse, lived and died, and Archimedes is famous for being Greek, not Italian, because at the time, Syracuse and the entirety of Sicily was a Greek island, not an Italian island.
Well, I'll have to look it up
So now I'm
because she
curious
also lived and died there.
So I'm curious if
Do you
she
think
was,
they're the same person?
No, I do not.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just more of a question of if she was born and died in Greece or born and died in Italy, and it was a
I
carryover, sort of like a Saturnalia. Why am I putting a fun accent onto that? Saturnalia was Saturn, which is Zeus, right?
Sure.
Like not Jupiter, Zeus. Who the heck's Saturn?
I never remember which one they correlate with. I have to be in the mind of one or in the mind of the other.
You have to be in their mindset. I like that.
Yeah, well, I'm reading a book.
Oh, the Greeks or the German. Okay, I see. No, the Germans.
Yeah, I'm reading a book that is about Greek gods, I believe. They use the Greek gods. So I can't flip back and forth.
Oh,
I don't
that
know
makes
enough
sense.
about them.
And you live in Italy.
Yes.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, Saturn in the lovely Roman mythology was a god, and I'm looking this up because I don't want to mess this up. But, oh, interesting. He's Cronus in Greek. He's the Titan Cronus.
Oh, Kronos?
Kronos, depending, I guess, how it's pronounced. And all I know of Kronos was from Percy Jackson. So those of you who read Percy Jackson, you might know who he is. And if you haven't, and you just read like actual history books, you also might know who he is.
So he was a Titan?
He was a Titan.
Okay.
I think of time, which is where we get to like Chrono.
So then, oh right, Saturn.
He
Sorry,
ate Zeus
not the sun.
and then died because Zeus cut open his stomach and killed her or something.
Wow.
So so it's interesting. They celebrate Saturnalia. Mm-hmm. Wild. So
Yeah.
all that was to say is I'm curious if Santa Lucia, if she was much more of a modern day in terms of like post 300 or 400 CE, or if more of like.
I think she was fairly modern.
Okay. Because she has that butter named after her too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
At the grocery store, there's a blue and white butter called Santa Lucia. I wonder if it's the same kind.
Yeah, maybe.
Like the goddess of also this butter.
Yes, could be.
Interesting.
So that's Santa Lucia. Oh, the point of that is that so all of this tradition around her and around Christmas time came from Verona. So she primarily, it's believed that she delivers your gifts in regions in northern Italy. And I think this also might be a tradition in Syracuse, but it is not really, it's not a Sicilian tradition necessarily. It started in Verona, which is interesting.
Very fascinating.
Yeah.
And Santa Lucia, because I also looked this up because what else am I going to do over here with my phone? I'm kidding, I'm obviously listening. Is, that sounds like I'm not listening. Oh no, I'm here. Was a Roman Christian martyr who died during the
Diocletian
prosecution.
Oh.
It's like Diocletian, both a Diocletianic prosecution. So yeah, but she would have been born at the time, even though a while ago it would have been the Western Roman Empire is where she was born.
Does it say here?
Does it say it here?
A year.
Oh yeah, she was born in 283.
Oh, that was much earlier than I thought.
Yeah, she's actually a well-known saint in modern England. I did not know this.
As well as, a lot of you are going to know this, I'm sure, Sweden or Switzerland has a big Santa Lucia celebration.
Interesting.
Children walk with candles. Everybody's dressed in white and you walk with candles to the church, I believe.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I do not know this. I'm not Swedish.
I think it's Swedish. Ooh, I'm sure somebody knows. Sorry, I got that wrong. Again, not a history podcast, and not about anywhere other than Italy. So, sorry.
It's what you come to us for.
Yeah. It sounded so sassy.
It really does.
So, sorry, guys. I'm not sorry. So,
Love that for us.
let's quickly just talk about a couple of other traditional things that happen in Italy. So there is the Zampognari, which is the people, the musicians who play the Zampoña, which is basically a bagpipe, but not in the way you might be thinking if you're thinking of the Scottish bagpipe. It's smaller and more shrill.
But it's still, functionally a bagpipe.
Yeah, it is.
Like it's a sheep's bladder or something filled with
I
air.
always thought it was a
squeezed
sheep's
down?
bladder. It's not. I think it's just sheepskin.
Sheep leather? Something like that? Okay.
And pipes.
Okay.
Played, I mean, it's a bagpipe. It's just a bit smaller, really.
And I don't think they've ever been in tune. Like a bagpipe, you can be like, that sounds like it's in tune. These things, I honestly don't know.
I think that is the tune.
That's phenomenal.
I think that's it. And so it's the Zampognari, am I making sure I'm saying that right? Yes, I am. The Zampognari are a band of merry musicians who go around playing music. And this happens a lot around Christmas time, and they play specifically Christmas music. But whenever I found out that this was something people are very excited about, I mean, you should be. They're very cool. But it seems like maybe in other parts of Italy, they don't come around very often.
Yeah.
But where we are, they are around playing music all the time.
I think every event, every festival, and then
almost every Saint Day.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them.
But around Christmas, they'll also go door to door, and you can pay like here's a €5, and they'll play a little
They're
song.
wandering minstrels.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
It's very cool.
But they also don't I think you read something they are supposed to dress up and look cool, and our guys are like in Diodora tracksuits and like muddy shoes and just like they came from the fields and like, oh, we should change into something nice. And then
in other places they do wear like traditional garb, which I think is medieval. It looked like in a lot of the photos.
Yeah, it's not like that here.
No.
They have like their Kappa sweatshirt
dudes
on, and they're like, hey, you want to hear some music? And they just like to tear it up on the fiddle or the flute or whatever it is. Not the flute. What is a little thing they scream into? Not scream into. They blow air into it.
It's a pipe.
It's a pipe, I guess. Okay.
The pipe that's connected to the sheepskin. Which
No,
makes
I meant the other one. The one that the like recorder, and it's just a really high pitched noise.
It's a woodwind of some kind. It probably has a name.
I should get one.
Maybe.
I know.
It's big. Let's do a big think on that. So that is a really cool thing, I think, to look forward to, because they are. I'm excited about them every time they happen, even though sometimes it's the exact same song over and over. And they'll start really early in the morning, sometimes where we are at the church, kind of near our house, and the tuning is loud.
Yeah.
It's big old whining sort of sounds, but it's good. I love it. It's so exciting.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Yule log, not the cake.
I was going to say not the cake, which I thought when you were going to bring this up, it was going to be the cake. I was very excited. No. It's not. We're not talking about cake.
No. Next episode, we'll talk about traditional Italian desserts.
But also probably
not
the Yule log.
The Yule log is not incorporated. No. So the actual log that you put in the fire is evidently a tradition that happens in northern Italy around Christmas time. It's obviously more Germanic, and we don't have that tradition down here in southern Italy, but nevertheless fascinating. And it in Lombardia, it is called the zocco. In Toscana, in Tuscany, it's called ciocco. So that's just a regional kind of dialect difference, but fascinating. And I believe it's in Toscana. So people have different traditions for their Yule log in different regions. And so one of the traditions is that kids, so the log is in the fire at this point, and kids take tongs and beat the log. And I've hit a log in the fireplace with a piece of metal before it creates sparks. So that seems fun and unsafe. But they beat the log while family members stand around and say Ave Maria del Ceppo, which is essentially log, I think, is the translation. So they say Ave Maria of the log while kids beat the log with sticks in the fireplace.
Interesting.
Which is fun.
So some people have Black Friday and some people have this thing.
Hitting a log. Yeah.
Well, we all have to get our kicks somehow.
And the other tradition is that the head of the household places a big behind piece of wood, log, in the fireplace. And I emphasize big because this single log has to last, I imagine with other logs around it, to make the fire. But this one log has to last until Epiphany. And that's a long time. That's like a month, probably, that this thing has to be in there.
Isn't it just from the Christmas Day?
You put the Yule log in on Christmas Day?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. In my mind, I'm imagining this for the entire Christmas season. So it's got to last
like a week and a half. Yeah.
12 days?
12 days.
It's 12 days of Christmas?
I was thinking they'd come before Christmas, but not after. But
no, the 12 days of Christmas are after Christmas.
That is ridiculous. Why?
I think.
It's like on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, and then it's like you give him gifts. I assumed it was like to lead up till Christmas, not like
you would think
Christmas is over, start giving me partridges, pear trees, and little
and
toy
rings
soldiers.
and gooses,
Exactly.
right?
There's
a lot of birds involved in that.
There really is.
I believe so.
Person lived in an apiary.
Yeah.
Or aviary. I guess apiary is where you keep the bees.
Bees, yeah. Okay, so thank you for that clarification. So once you put the Yule log in at Christmas, it has to last until Epiphany. And then you have to conserve. So you can't burn all the way. You have to conserve a small part of it for next year.
I'm curious too, because it sounds like you need a big fireplace or a regular sized fireplace, and just like my father, when he had a fireplace, would put in a 2x4, but he didn't want to cut them. It's like 12-foot 2x4, so he just laid it down on the floor, and then he would just feed it in a little by little as it burned. And I'm kind of wondering that's what they do.
It seemed to work, yeah. Maybe that's what they do.
Because it doesn't really, it's not going to catch like down the log. So I'm wondering if they just put in a giant log and just scoot this in every day and it'll be fine. But I'm also thinking the amount of ash you have to clean out. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So to recap what I learned today, I feel like I'm at school. Here's what I learned. I learned that Saturnalia happened on the not the 25th, I guess up to the 25th, ending on the 23rd. Then they celebrated the Invincible Sun on the 25th. They gave each other gifts. They used to do human sacrifices. They don't anymore. Write little poems, sacrifice to the gods, drink a little bit, have some games. Gambling was not compulsory, but you could go gambling. I like to pick and choose what I learned, is really what I learned. And then that was basically the 25th was supposed to be at the time the darkest night of the year, only got brighter from there. And then they sort of went back to work.
Yeah, pretty much.
And also there was other stuff happening.
Yeah.
I imagine we just talked about the other stuff, but I was just sort of recapping the earlier bits.
Yeah, I liked it.
How I understood it, I guess.
That was good.
That was great.
I think you passed the test.
Thank you. And I think that's basically, I think also we talked about our own experiences in there as well. I know we were going to touch on those, but that's kind of our experiences as well tied in with that, is just simply the fact that it is not potentially what you might expect coming to Italy and wanting to experience what a traditional Christmas in Italy might be for those of you who have not. But again, this is very much limited to our experience. So it's like a bit of history, a bit of our experience. So if you're Italian or if you're from an Italian family and you're like, that's not at all how it is, then we genuinely actually love to hear that.
Oh, please let us know. Yes.
Yeah, because we'd love to know how it differs. And I think mainly because one of the things is you and I often joke about not being in Italy for Christmas because it is so dour, for lack of a better word. It's just
melancholy.
So melancholy is great. Yeah. And I think that's natural because it gets really dark. And I mean, it gets dark. It got sunset today at 4:40. You're still like dinner time is still 9:30, 9. So it's like, what do you do for 4 hours? And we thought, we joked with this, I think the last episode is like, I guess, blowing glass in Murano and making a tree, but it is like, by like 7, it's like, it's PJs and I'm ready for bed and you have like,
and it's cold.
Especially
like, not especially now, but in these days, heating is quite expensive. It is, artificially inflated sometimes, always.
I think all utilities in Italy are artificially inflated.
For conservation purposes, which is not an issue that we have to deal with in the States. Obviously, it's still expensive to heat your house. I don't mean to say that it's not, but here it is not common to have every room heated. So our living room is heated, and we have small heaters that we turn on if we absolutely need them in, my studio where I paint and the bathroom. Otherwise,
I'd go so far though to say it's very uncommon to see every room warm. Even in people who are wealthy, they're like, no, I'm going to heat like my office and the living room and the kitchen.
And there's no central heating.
Yeah.
It is a stove.
Well, I mean, where we are,
yeah.
But there's a lot of people who have radiators.
Yes. Yeah. But you can turn off, yeah, that's a good point. But some people will turn off the radiator in the rooms that they don't
use.
Exactly. So it's quite different, and it can be quite melancholy because it's dark and it is cold.
And it's kind of like you feel like you're in one room for 4 months. Like in the summer is different, but we often joke about the fact that, and for those of you looking to buy a house in Southern Italy, or in Italy in general, but I say Southern Italy because, oh my God, you could find a house for like, 8,000 euros. But it's like they built the houses for summer, not for winter. It's just in terms of, they built it like to be cooled down quickly, but it's like it does not warm up quickly. So it's a little bit of a difference. But that being said, yeah, if you're coming to Italy, if you want to experience a traditional kind of fun, I imagine the north, and as you mentioned before, somewhat erroneously, if you want to see the largest Christmas tree in Italy, you can do so in Gubbio. But as we found out, it's not a Christmas tree. What is it, Darcy?
It's lights in the shape of a Christmas tree along a very big mountain face.
Which is ridiculous. That is just like not the same.
I was really disappointed in that.
That's like saying the largest tree in the world is like the Burj Khalifa. It's like, no, that's a building. That's a fundamentally different thing. So anyway.
It's building the shape of a tree.
Yeah, that is not at all the same thing. So I think that's everything, though. I mean, this is kind of, I realize, is not as festive as, a podcast about Christmas in Germany might be, but it's pretty festive. It's a little depressing.
Yeah,
it's like
and what is
espresso.
Christmas if not a little bit festive and a little bit depressing?
Absolutely. So on that happy note, on that joyous occasion, we're going to go put on some music. We're going to decorate this tree. We're going to make something to eat eventually.
And then we're going to have some panettone.
And you might be thinking, what is panettone? Well, that is a secret for the next episode, which will not be actually coming out because our next episode would be coming out on Christmas Day. And we can imagine some of you are probably going to be busy. Others are probably going to be busy for other reasons, just like not wanting to engage with the world. And some of you might be, I don't know, working. I don't really know what people do on Christmas Day.
We're getting ready for Hanukkah on the 26th.
Yeah.
For Kwanzaa, also on the 26th this year.
That's a packed day. And Santo Stefano, Boxing Day, all sorts of stuff. So that being said, we do appreciate you all so much for listening. We know it's going to be a busy week. And if there's any questions, comments, concerns, we're onlybagpodcast@gmail.com.
When is our next episode coming out?
We're going to do a short episode on food the 25th, and then we're going to talk about Epifana afterwards.
Yes.
And that will be led by the dearest and greatest Darcy Melton. Nathaniel might chime in on the food one, though, because I think, I haven't been talking that much, so I'd like to. Let's make this more about me. So with that being said, thank you all so much for listening. We really do appreciate it. It is, we're getting back in the swing of it now that we're back from the States, and we're getting there. We're going. And hopefully we'll figure out a way to make the stove in the background a little bit calmer.
Vediamo. We'll see.
We'll see. So with that being said, thank you all for listening.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget, if you have any suggestions or want to share your holiday traditions with us, pictures of your plants or pets, you can contact us at onlyabagpodcast@gmail.com and on Instagram at onlyabagpodcast. And did you mention our website yet?
Onlyabag.com, where I have some articles. And in the new year, I will be posting more and writing more for that. We've just been sort of getting back into the habit of being in Italy, and my feet are constantly cold, which doesn't affect writing, but man, it's a distraction.
But we got slippers yesterday.
We did get slippers.
Yeah.
So expect more articles now that I have slippers. That's all that is to say.
And thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time about some panettone.